people don't understand that there's two different factors of depression, where you can have situational, where it's a circumstance where you lost a loved one or something like that. But then on the flip side, you can have more of a chemical imbalance that is genetic. So making sure that students understand biological implications of health, and then how that may impact or be impacted by psychosocial stresses. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, good. And because I come from that theoretical orientation, sometimes it's very hard for students to get it. So you have to learn brain structures, you have to learn brain chemicals, you have to learn endocrinology, so that's your glands and hormones, and I teach that, and I encourage them to heavily focus on that under my leadership. I've also been trained as a clinical community psychologist, meaning that I look at programs and understand why they are not necessarily working for their target audience, and meeting with directors and other gatekeepers of organizations to help them truly improve their programs to reach their target audience. And then as far as I'm concerned, for the most part, I was taught to be a practitioner in graduate school, pursuing a doctorate, and a researcher. So the question became, how do we teach? My interest in graduate school was to be a practitioner, to be honest. But then life throws interesting curveballs at you, and I decided to become an academic. And one of the things that I didn't want to do was bore my students. I didn't want to lose them again with having such an intense foundation of biology, and these are students, again, who have been so far removed from the higher education realm. I wanted to be able to connect with them. So I began to think about what were my experiences as a student. What were those things that bored the living daylights out of me, and what were those things that captivated me? And I remember when I was in graduate school, I don't know about you guys' experience, but in a mental health program in grad school, I remember it was just like maybe 10 of us sitting around the table as a rectangular table like this with a professor. And unfortunately, I remember developing the skill to fall asleep with my eyes open because I was just so bored, and I could just sit there and I'd be asleep with my eyes open. And because of that, I thought about those things, and I said, I don't want my students to sleep on me, because we put in time to prepare our lectures, and you don't stand there just because. You stand there because you want your students to actually receive something from you. And I always tell my students, I take being an academic, just like being a practitioner, very serious. So with that being said, I thought about it. Do the opposite of those things that lost me, one, but also enhance those things that captivated me. Professors who act as if they cared. One of the things that stood out was my experiences at Morgan State University, where I did my undergrad. I did my doctoral studies at USC. And the professors who captivated me, who made me feel like, oh, I gotta be to class on time, because if not, were the ones who said, well, what took you so long? In a joking manner. Or in the hallway, they would walk up to you and say, well, how's classes going? You know, did you do your assignments? What's the semester look like for you? And I remembered those things. But I also wanted to add substance to my experiences as well, and begin to look at the research literature on teaching. What does it say about how to teach? And I don't know about you guys, but my experience was that it wasn't much for a professor to receive from the literature as to how to. Was that your experience? Yes? No? Thank you. Somebody. I didn't find much as to, as a professor, how to captivate your students. And one of the things that I think is very important is to keep in mind that we're the, as you said, practitioner, we're the doctors in the room, right? We're the resource bank in the room. And you know so much information, and I think it's super duper important to never forget that we're here with regard to knowledge, and we need to bring it down here to be able to captivate our students. You never want to, just like they say when you write in a newspaper article. You want to write at a 6th grade level, meaning that you want to dumb down your information. Pardon with the term dumb. But you want to break it down to the point where your students are captivated by it, right? You don't want to lose them because everything that spits out your mouth is more clinical jargon and you have difficulty breaking it down to its specifics. And I think that's a very dangerous thing. So, I was waiting for you. So, with that being said, I looked at the research and I came across some things that I felt, even though it wasn't necessarily written for the college community, I felt that maybe it could be adapted or adjusted to fit within. And this is what I'm going to share with you now. So again, these are my techniques, okay? This is what Dr. Griffin uses in her class. So I divided it into two, one being the cognitive psychology techniques that I use, and the other being what I consider unconventional, and I'll tell you why I consider them to be unconventional in a second. When my students enter my class, I make sure I stand at the door and I greet each of them. How you doing? Good to see you. Did you get my email? Because I email them a week or so before class just to say, hi, it's me. I'm waiting to meet you on the first day of class. When we go through our syllabus, I begin to tell them, each of you are junior scholars to me. And they say, what, Dr. Griffin? You're a junior scholar. And the reason I call them that is because when you think about what I said about the students, these are first generational, some of them. These are students who've been removed from the higher education realm. Many of them come to class discouraged. And then when I start talking about the fact that they need to know bio, it's like, oh my goodness, let me get out of here. Let me drop this class. And I tell them, no, don't leave, stay with me. And I said, one of the things that you've done is key to success, and that's coming to school. You're already on a journey to positioning yourself to have a brighter future. High school diplomas don't work anymore, particularly for students of color, to be realistic. Black and Hispanics are not going to make it, for the most part, in a society where we're already marginalized, disenfranchised with a high school degree. So with that being said, we have to make sure that our students are encouraged to keep moving forward. So my students are called junior scholars. When they speak, I'll say, junior scholar so-and-so, what's your response to this? And eventually it captivates them and encourages them, and it also empowers them as students. I'm very encouraging. Think about, say for instance, when you were in grade school and your teacher at that time said, very good job, so-and-so. Didn't it make you feel some kind of way? Yes, no?
Yes.
It made you feel like, oh yeah, I got it, right? It made you feel good. So then the question becomes, why can't we do that at the college level? And are we doing it at the college level? Do our college students, because they're adults, do they not need some type of positive reinforcement? I think so. And I've had some classes, like I said, that didn't necessarily do that, but I had some professors who did. And for those who did, particularly in a class where you feel like you may struggle, it almost made you more empowered to keep trying. The other thing that I do under the umbrella of cognitive psychology is, from day one, my students can never sit like this. I don't like it. And I tell them, part of your college experience is to be able to connect with peers and establish peer relationships that will continue throughout your life. One of my dearest friends I met in college. She's like my sister to me. But how do we connect with each other? How do we form study buddies and things like that if every time you talk, all I see is here? All I see is the back of your head. So my students, we sit in a horseshoe. And I tell them, it's not to make you feel like you're in kindergarten. I said, if you trust Dr. Griffin, you'll understand what I'm doing. When I talk to you, it's good that you see me, correct? But when your fellow peers talk, isn't it good that you see them as well? And I don't care if I have 40 students in my room, I tell them, make it work. Fix these chairs into a horseshoe. And it takes them maybe 1 or 2 lectures to kind of get it and remember that that's how I want my class. But this is the way that we do it, because I believe in creating a communal atmosphere for learning. Excuse me. If we create a community, that means that you're learning from me, but you can also learn from each other. If we're looking at each other and she has a response and I'm saying, oh yes, so-and-so said X, Y, and Z.